What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. What we're going to go through today is how to write a blog post for a complete beginner. So even if you've got no experience, you've never written a blog post before, then this is going to be a tutorial for you. Now, I've seen many tutorials on the internet across YouTube, and what all of them fail to do is give you an over-the-shoulder look at how to write a blog post. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to hop onto the computer and I'm going to run you through everything of how to do this step by step. Free and very simple to use. We're going to use Google search engine. We're going to use Grammarly, which is a Google extension tool, and I'll show you how to install that. And we're also going to use Google Docs. Now, my reason for using Google Docs is purely on the basis that Google Docs auto saves and it allows you to share files with others as well. So that's two of the benefits that I really use it for a lot of the time. And it's more specifically focused for just writing than WordPress, you know, whereas WordPress is focused on you building a site and content in a blog post sort of way. Google Docs gives you much more function in regards to just writing that blog post to the best of your ability, and then you can copy it into WordPress. What we're going to quickly go through and establish is the differences between a blog post and an article. Okay, so an article is coming from a basis of fact, and you would find this across like news websites, established authorities, whereas a blog post is usually coming from a place of opinion or based on facts that one has researched. What we're doing when we're writing blog posts is writing blog posts. Okay, so just remember that and bear that in mind. You can share your personal opinion or your personal thoughts a lot of the time inside of your writing. You can also describe places of where your environment is, where you're writing from, what country you're in, all of these things that are specifically tailored to you. And that really showcases through your character in your writing and helps to really build up a lot of trust and authority with the audience that are reading your posts across your site. So a lot of the time you hear YouTubers use the words article and blog post interchangeably, but really we're talking about blog posts. Okay, you're not going to be writing articles unless you are completely basing your writing on fact and you are an authority to talk about that topic across the internet. So just bear that in mind when you're building out your website.
Alright, so there's a few house rules that you want to be following when you're creating a new blog post. During your research or whilst you're working during this period, you want all notifications switched off. Now, many of you may frown upon that, thinking that that's very basic, but these things can really affect your productivity and how efficient you are in writing your blog post. Now, what we're going to install is Grammarly. Grammarly is just a very simple Google extension tool, which you can just type extensions into Google and it will come up with this web store, and you just type Grammarly. Okay, it's very simple. Once you've set it up, click it, install it, and you'll be able to get started with that. You'll just see a little icon pop up here. It's a free plugin. It will correct whether you're writing an email or a blog post. It will auto correct your information or give you suggestions on how to do so. Now, why this is also very beneficial is it's in beta with Google Docs, but you're able to select the country that you would like to specify the language in. So if you are not a native speaker from the UK or the United States, you're able to get your information grammatically corrected on that by using Grammarly. Now, if you upgrade to the subscription, then they'll give you more in-depth analyzations of your writings.
So tip number one is definitely going to be making sure that your topic is being searched. This is one of the biggest ways that beginners go wrong, by making something that you just think is going to do well or you assume that people want to know. But everything on the internet is based on supply and demand. So making sure that there's a demand for the supply that you're providing is absolutely paramount.
One of the ways we establish that is by going into Google and just making sure that we are writing things in the same way that people are searching for it. Okay, so yeah, and you can see all the suggestions. For this particular topic, I can see this is of low competition because there's a forum showing up for it. So we can probably create a better resource than what's available there right now. And then this is very short and not really full-fledged.
Tip number two is definitely going to be structuring your post in the right way. If someone comes into a Best Buy review, they already know probably how it can help them, but they're indecisive about which one to go for. So what they're specifically looking for is a list of different recommendations. So you need to format your post in the correct way, in the correct format. Whereas if someone's looking to get an answer to their question, they're specifically looking for that answer, and then the rest of your post to then dive into more detail. On the flip side, if we're doing a 1v1 comparison type blog post, then we might be looking at something where we're describing the author a few of the things of how one compares to the other, and then some of the pros and cons of each. And that might be displayed in a relatively similar way to how you do a Best Buy roundup, but a little bit different. Now, if you want to get some of those templates, you can check out my templates below this video, and I'll give you access to all of my structures so you can download them and use them for yourself. Tip number 3 is researching all the correct subtopics to include and incorporate within your blog post. Making sure that you do this not only helps you with ranking and your SEO purposes, but it also helps your reader to get the answer that they were looking for. When we're researching these subtopics, we're also trying to establish the search intent. And what that means is understanding and deciphering exactly what someone's trying to get out of that topic or out of your answer when they're searching around a particular phrase.
So when I take a look at this, I can see that the question and the intent behind this search is, can you charge a motorcycle battery with a car? So they would like a yes or no answer. Now they have managed to get that. So we're looking at what's missing from this article. So this is specifically on how to charge a motorcycle battery with a car. Like, how do you do it? Okay, so I'm sure that a lot of the time if someone's typing can you, they probably know how to, but we would include that still in the post. However, it wouldn't be at the forefront. So this article wasn't specifically created to target that search term. It's just so happened ranking for it because Google feels that it's a relevant resource for the person searching. Okay, now up in number 3, let's take a look at there. So this again is how to charge a motorcycle battery. Okay, so it's not specifically with a car or anything like that. It's just about charging a battery, and probably covers potentially using a car battery throughout this article at some point. Yeah, which is why it's ranking, because it's got the word car on the page 11 times. Okay, I can clearly see that there are things missing. The question is, can you charge a motorcycle battery with a car? Everything else following up on that, on our subtopic coverage, should be related to this question at hand.
Tip number 4 is going to be keeping your blog post on point and on topic. Far too often, people start off with a great recommendation or a great bit of information and then start to veer off and generically get into the industry. We don't want to find out that vague, blasé information when we're looking for an answer around a specific topic. So you need to make sure that from the very last answer all the way up to your first subtopic, you're covering everything specifically related to the umbrella topic that you're covering overall for this particular blog post.
Now, the way we do this is by basically going onto the Google search results and having a look at all the other things that Google are suggesting to us. So we can look at some of the articles if they were on point and on topic, and we can also look at Google. This is a specific subtopic. Okay, so this initial question is, can you charge it with a car battery? But now it's asking, can you jumpstart it? So if it's broken down, are you able to get the motorbike started with the car battery? And what we want to do is lay out all the subtopics that we'd like to cover throughout this article. Now, one of the methods that I used to use is, if I'm answering a question like this, very short question specific to our industry and about a specific thing, we're usually going for about 1,500 words. Now, if I'm going to be writing about 1,500 words, I need to figure out how many subtopics I need to cover with a 200 to 300 word count in order to know how many subtopics I need to put in the post. Okay, we take 1,500 words and then we wanted to do like roughly about 300 words per section. So we divide it by 300. That gives us 5 subtopics, and that's not including the conclusion. 5 subtopics that we'll cover within this article, and then we've got a 1,500 word article. Okay, the first part's going to be our introduction, which will be around 150, 200 words, and then we're going to go down to the subtopic. So this will be about 300 words, and we've got 4 more. Okay, I hope that helps you to understand how we're going to go about this. So when you click this and open and close it, it gives you more options that Google suggests of more related questions around this topic. We can also use our general knowledge or our common sense to form these subtopics as well. So if we think carefully, what are some of the things that people are thinking or wanting to know if they're particularly searching how to jumpstart their motorcycle motorcycle. They're broken down and they need to get the bike started, okay?
Yeah. Number 5 is making sure that your content is actionable. When someone reads your blog post, they're going to have a far better experience if they can get the information they're looking for and then go out and action it. If someone's looking for the example like we've just given, well, they want to leave reading your blog post and be able to go and start that motorcycle. So you need to really question and ask yourself, have you covered the actionable steps within your content? The more actionable, the more beneficial it's going to be to others.
Okay, so one of the other things that I've established here is people are asking a lot about the amps of the charger. Okay, so what we could create is a small table of the different amps that you can use on a car battery. So some of the ones that are recommended or not recommended, or the different types of chargers. Okay, so that's what we're going to go to here. Our third subtopic that we're going to be covering here is recommended amps of a charger for use on a motorcycle.
Tip number 6 is going to be using tables, charts, graphs, lists, or absolutely anything that you can head out and research to gather more information and truly separate yourself from all of the competition across Google. So what you want to do is carry out some independent studies, sometimes going into forums and seeing how real people have actually had experiences with these particular products. Anything like that is going to really separate your content from anything else that's available for people to read.
So we could have a bulleted list that goes through some of the most recommended amps to use and the ones not to use, and then go through a short explanation of that list after in text format. Okay, so one of the other things that we're going to be including inside of here is I can see that they're unsure about how long to charge the battery. Okay, so what are some of the indications that they can look out for of when the battery is charged?
How long can you charge a motorcycle battery on a car?
Okay, so we've also got now other common batteries you can use on a motorcycle. Okay, so we've got our introduction, we've got our subtopics, and then lastly we'll have our conclusion. You always want to establish the correct subtopics to cover. You want to keep them closely knit to the main topic of the article. Now, I always recommend to write in first person if you're writing for a blog, personally, because you want to come from a perspective of being a relatable person, a real person that someone can relate to in that sense, okay?
7. Tone and style of writing. This is not only important for things like YouTube. For example, if I was using the wrong tone, you wouldn't want to listen to this video, you'd probably click off. So if you're still watching, make sure to smash the like button right about now. But most importantly, when you're doing it through your content, it needs to be in a way that people are going to want to read. For example, if you've got a personal blog or you're not a professional around a particular topic, then you want to come from that angle of speaking from I and you. I always use this across my websites because I'm probably never an expert on any of the topics I'm talking about at the beginning anyway. So if someone can relate to you or the content that you're writing, they're probably a lot more likely to pick up on the recommendations that you're giving them later on.
Now, everything's a lot easier at this point because you're essentially just filling in the blanks.
It's filling in whether you can jumpstart a motorcycle battery with a car, how long to charge a motorcycle battery on a car, recommended amps of a charger for use on a motorcycle, other common batteries you can use on a motorcycle,
and other tools or ways to start a motorcycle in an emergency, because this could be someone that's broken down on the side of the street and they're looking for a quick way to get this motorcycle started so they can get home. Okay.
Number 9 is going to be images. You just can't have any kind of blog post without images. It breaks up the text and it makes it more digestible for someone to take on. I personally think images are a great way to incorporate some unique angles that you might not find elsewhere across the net. So one of the ways you can make your images helpful is by taking unique images of your own environments and then implementing that into helpful resources throughout your blog post.
One of the best places that I find images for websites is a place called Deposit Photos. Okay, so this is optional, it's a paid service, but if you were gonna go and look for images, I would recommend this. Okay, it's a great place for stock images. Now, if you can take your own images, even better. So if you own a motorcycle or you own the product you're talking about, you are never ever gonna get better than your own images, okay, because they are personalized, so it makes you unique and stand out right there. I usually like to get something with people in the image because it makes it a lot more relatable, but of course if you couldn't find something, maybe you'd want to take your own image if possible. Now, if you're looking for free images, a lot of the time you can just go onto Google. If you go to images and then you go to tools and usage rights, Creative Commons licenses, it'll bring up a bunch of different sites that are allowing you to use images for free. So a lot of these images you can just use right away. But if you go to any of these websites, they're free stock websites. So you've got Pixabay, Wikipedia images a lot of the time are ones you can use. Pixneo, okay, so that's another one. Flickr, that's another free one. So that's how you would find and establish all of these different free stock image websites, and you can just save these websites and later use them for other purposes. Okay, so how do you start the very first sentence in the article? Well, what I would start it with is by establishing exactly what your article is going to cover. That is the very first sentence of what you want to put down. So what I've got here is very simple. You could write something a lot better than this, but what this is specifically to also help with SEO. So the way Google will read this is it comes in and reads specific words on the page to understand and establish whether you're relevant to cover this topic. One of the other things is we're also formatting our content in the right way. So we're not doing no more than 2 to 3 lines per paragraph, because when you're looking at things on mobile, you don't want a big wall of text. So we want this to look appealing to anyone, no matter the device that they're on. Now, I personally recommend that you edit as you go along and then overall read your blog post at the end. I don't correct everything right there and then, but you do want to edit as much of it as you can going along, because I found it in my personal circumstance to help me to move more efficiently than if I had to go back through and re-understand everything and re-edit everything. Okay, so when we're writing for a specific question like this, we want to get straight into giving the answer to the question, probably in the 2nd or 3rd paragraph. So once you've filled in all of the blanks within the article and you've got your article written, the last things you're going to need to do is to format the article, and then also you're going to need to add any outbound links to resources. Now, these outbound links are also beneficial for SEO purposes, for the blog post to show up in Google. One of the things that I always specify on my outbound links is that you link out to authorities who are authoritative or qualified to talk about the topic or expand upon a topic that you briefly covered. Those are probably the 2 main things that I would specify inside of an outbound link. Now, how many do you put into a blog post? Okay, I personally would recommend 2 per 1,000 words, 1 to 2 per 1,000 words, and keep around that average. Now, when you come to before publishing, there's something called structure of a blog post. Okay, so the way Google understands topics and subtopics of a main topic is through your title sizing. Okay, so the way we establish this is by making our main heading a H1. Now, this is done by WordPress for you, so you do not need to do your main title inside of WordPress. Now, for any of your subtopics, what I like to do is make all of your main subtopics H2 sizing. What I wanted to do was just put a little bit of emphasis on how important it is to structure your post in the right way. So if we take a look at this, the way that Google's going to read this is through, first of all, understanding the subheadings. Okay, so what we've got here is a H2 heading. So the main title will be a H1, and to show you this, we can hover over it and you can see just up there in the top left of that white box, it says H1 entry title. And then as we come down, we've now got H2. Now, anything that's a subtopic of this H2 subheading is going to be a H3, and that shows that it's part of this H2 subheading. So anything under is a H3. Now, if we come back to talking about something completely new, we'll revert back to a H2. So it still goes under the main topic of the entire blog post, but it's a main subtopic. So just to show you again, we've got a H3 here, which remains under this H2. So having a clear introduction is still to do with structuring a blog post. Keep paragraphs short is still to do with structuring a blog post. So is this, and this. Now, as we change topic, we say before you start writing, this is now a new process. So everything prior to this was to do with specifically structuring a blog post. So all of these subtopics were H3s as they were a subheading of our main topic here. If we went into further depth on any of these subheadings, then we would start to dive into H4s, and anything that's a subtopic of that H4 would go into a H5. And then as we come back in to anything to do with structuring a blog post, would go back to a H3 because it still goes under that umbrella of structuring a blog post. And I found a really cool image on Google that shows us this in a bit more detail. So we've got the main heading, which is our entire blog post, which is a H1. And then any subtopics of our main topic of the blog post is going to be a H2. And then anything that's a subtopic of any of those H2s will go into H3 and so on. Now, to do this, I would recommend you do it right in Google Docs. So then it saves you the time and effort of when you copy it into WordPress. So what we want to do is highlight the piece of text that we'd like to make a H2. And then what we are doing on the first occasion is we are setting the standards for our H2 headings. So it can be any sizing that we want and any font, okay? And then anytime we select H2, it will default to that setting that we've set. So we select the heading and then we select down to headings. We don't want to do H1. We want to do apply heading 2. Okay, so apply heading 2. This is the standard default setting for heading 2. Now we can tweak that so it goes all nice with our blog post. It doesn't really matter because when it goes over to WordPress, it's just going to go into the default size that's set by the theme. Okay, so you would have to change that in WordPress by your theme settings, which would change your overall H2s across your whole website if you wanted to change that on WordPress. But what we're going to do for argument's sake is set it to 15 and we'll remove space from the top. So now we will go to H2 and update to match. So anytime we select anything to become H2, it will automatically set to the settings that we've set. Say, for example, I wanted to dive in as a subtopic of can you jumpstart a motorcycle with a car. I wanted to go on to specifically jumpstarting with an electric car battery. So this is talking about our standard diesel and petrol vehicles. And then here we've dived into electric car batteries and what the differences are. Okay. What we would do for this is we would make it a H3. Okay. So we've got H3. So remove space before, maybe make it bold and make sure the sizing is smaller than our other one. And then we would update H3 headings to match. So anytime we make something else a H3, as I could do here, it will automatically default to the settings that we've set in. Okay, so the very last thing that you want to do is just simply go over the article, make any final edits, add in any images. You might want to make a note for an image just in brackets, how I used to do, like image here or something like that, across areas that you want to add images. Now, I would personally recommend for a 1500 word post, you might want to add 1 to 2 images max. You don't need to go overboard because it starts to become a little bit overwhelming. You just want to do it enough that it breaks up the text every so often to give a pattern interrupt and also aid the blog post in making your content actionable and better understood.
Number 10 is definitely using Grammarly. You always want to go over your work in the final edit to make sure that everything's grammatically correct, reading well, and easily digestible for people to take on board.
Now, there's 2 options. You can correct your basic grammatical errors inside of the article by Grammarly plugin just suggesting. It usually comes up with like a red thing, okay? Or alternatively, you can copy the blog post over to Grammarly tool, the plugin, and the way to get there is just to select the extension, click new document, and it will take you to that screen. And then it gives you more in-depth suggestions on what things you should be changing. Now, once you've done this, you want to head over to your WordPress dashboard and click post, add new post, because this will be a post, it won't be a page. And then we would just copy it in. So as we copy it in, you can see we'd be able to set our main title. So, you know, this is for the YouTube title, but we could use that in the example here. So you can see everything that we've set as H2 is already done for us. So that was a H3, H2, and it's all already SEO optimized and ready to go.
And that's really about it, guys. That's everything on how to write a blog post in a complete tutorial that should be completely actionable. So you should be able to have watched this video and go out and do it yourself, and give you also an in-depth understanding of all of the different variables that we take into consideration when we're trying to write, rank, and monetize a blog post. If you enjoyed that video, then make sure to smash the like button. Thank you for watching, and if you are new, you know what to do. Make sure you subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.